Namaste and welcome to Satsang. So Satsang is, as always, for the direct realization and being of that true self that you are. The truth is that we're not at all what we thought we were, and when we actually discover what we really are, we'll be surprised and delighted. At least I've never had anyone come back and say, you know, oh, I want my money back. I don't really want to be infinite and unlimited. I'd rather be a person. So with that in mind, on these Monday satsangs, I've been reading from my own books because they, I think I've said before, they form a jigsaw puzzle of all the information that I felt I didn't have access to when I was waking up, or that it could have been said perhaps more direct way. If you're like me, I liked my spiritual teaching to hit me around the head, you know, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. So I'm going to read today from Now That You Are Formless, Contemplations for Self-Revelation, because, and I wrote this book because there was a very large gap, probably 5 or 6 years, between the first time I asked the question, what am I? And maybe more than that actually, and found that I couldn't find myself at all as a thing, as an object. I was here, but I couldn't find myself as the someone that I've always assumed I was. When I actually looked, there was no entity called Helen. There was a body, there was thoughts, there was emotions, but no separate being. And when I'd asked that question the first time, it seemed to take a very long time then to come to the constant and effortless realization of what that really means, that I'm infinite and everywhere, and all of this, and that all of this is me. Everything that seems to be other than me is just in imagination only. So I wrote this book really to help to expand our thinking, stretch our thinking, because a lot of people I've come across, you may have seen that they're not a tangible someone, but they're still treating that formlessness as if it was an object, as in it reaches only so far. There are things other than it that exist. So I'm going to read, we'll start off reading the whole thing. Hopefully we can get through over 2 satsangs, 2 Mondays. We'll see how we go. So it's titled Now That You Are Formless, like where'd you go from that realization? But the first chapter is really how to confirm that you're formless. So you can start with this book from anywhere if you're brand new to satsang, this is just as accessible to you than to someone who's been sitting in satsang for a while. Okay. So, okay. The chapter 1 is the introduction. This book will be most useful for those that have done a certain amount of self-inquiry and have come to realize that they cannot find themselves anywhere that they look. It will also be useful for those who have accidentally stumbled upon the fact that the person they've taken themselves to be is not real, nor was it ever. However, this book will be useful to anyone on a spiritual pathway that is dedicated to full enlightenment, self-realization, no matter where they think they have progressed to. The purpose of this book is to help bridge a gap that seemed to appear for the author upon realization of the formlessness. There had been many recognitions of true nature of myself as being emptiness, formlessness, or nothingness. It had been seen many times by myself that the person I thought I was simply did not exist. The person was a thought construct, and so was all its expectations, beliefs, resistances, hopes, and dreams. After seeing this, there was a huge impact upon the experience of living, and fear began to vanish along with doubts, desires, and much more. After an initial honeymoon period, this change seemed to slow right down, and there was some restlessness in the being again, as if some answer was still missing. Over time, I began to question why that was, and why I was not living as the sages of old did. It seemed that some ingredient was missing. I began to become very curious about this and what was happening, and an urgency to find out developed. It suddenly became urgent that I find out what it meant to be formless. Now, what it means to be formless cannot simply be what you think about it, because that is happening in thought and form only. It occurred to me that I must become at least as interested in what it means to fully realize formlessness as I was previously interested in believing I was a person. So all of us have put a lot of effort and consistency into constantly reinforcing this idea of ourselves as a someone. And of course, we haven't done this consciously or realized that we're doing it. So it occurred to me that perhaps I'm going to have to reverse that to some degree, to be at least as curious as what it means that I've found out what I actually am. What does that actually mean? Have I seen it all? I had to become devoted to my own formlessness with vigor, conviction, and passion with which I once believed I was a separate entity, alone in time and space. I began to realize that at some point, I must have spent a considerable amount of time ignoring my formlessness as an infant and focusing only on one body and time and space. I began to wonder if this is what the sages had done, and I recalled the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree with delight. I suddenly knew what Christ had gone into the desert for. It was obvious suddenly that I must develop a single-minded focus on living as formlessness itself and all that was involved. In short, I must reverse the process I had unknowingly undertaken as an infant in this body. I began to notice such descriptions from all the awakened beings of all ages that I had read about and encountered. I would read such things as just stay as the witness, or stay as the self, or even be nothing. Sri Ramana Maharshi's highest teaching was his silence. But if we could not recognize it, he would simply tell us to be still. Questions. I noticed that when something happened in the outer world, some inner response was triggered inside myself, that a question arose inside me spontaneously. I asked myself, how would this affect me if I was formless? And each time the same answer came. The more interested I became in this, the more questions began to come, such as, what do I have to do about this? And is this relevant to me still from here? I began to contemplate everything that happened to the mind and body and held it up to be examined in the light of these questions. After all, if I was truly the infinite formless presence, then I could not keep thinking I still had things to transcend, to let go of, or to work through. I could not even keep believing that I had to deepen my experience of living as this. I realized I was being asked to make a choice every moment of whether to live as a form or whether to live as myself, the formless one. I've written this book to help bring light to this stage and to present the questions that really helped me in a systematic way. There seemed to be very little written by the sages to explain this stage of realization. Only simple remarks such as stay as the witness, as described before. It's my aim with this book to speed this process of falling totally in love with yourself as you really are, and to let go of all delusion. The rest of the book presents one idea per chapter. Contemplate whichever one feels most magnetic to you right now, and in the end you'll see that all the chapters are the same. Each idea is designed to help you live as you really are, to fully live as the infinite nature you are. It's one thing to know that you are infinite, timeless, deathless, sentience itself. and another to realize the implications of this and the joy it can bring. Work through them all if you can, as contemplating each chapter will simultaneously be working on all the others at the same time. Over time, the process itself will become so joyful and exciting to you that you won't want it to stop. Contemplation is simply asking a thought question and experiencing the answer. The first thing that will happen is that you'll receive a thought answer to your question. Then you may receive an emotional answer. And finally, an experiential answer. When you receive an experiential answer, you must stay very interested in this. Ask again and again until you are so used to the experiential answer that it feels obvious. It may begin to feel absurd or strange even to ask the question anymore, but stay with it. So the experiential answer that I'm talking about here, let's say if I ask the question, what does it mean to be myself? Then I could have a load of thoughts in answer to that, and most of us will. And to ask that question, I may experience an emotional state, an excitement or a joy, or I may experience unworthiness as a feeling comes up, belief comes up in response to that question that I'm never going to know the answer to that, or I'm never going to get there. So there'll be some thoughts, there'll be some emotional, positive and negative emotional states in response to a question, any question. But we're looking for a deeper answer here, an answer that is actually experienced. So the answer will be some form of the formless self, the noumenon, which may appear as silence or just a blank at first, an absence of thoughts and emotional answers. Or it may appear as a sense of stillness, just a vastness and emptiness, nothingness at all, just a profound or sometimes very ordinary seeming space. There's where just nothing is happening. So all of these are the experiential answer that we're looking for without making the other answers wrong. And the more that you ask a question, the faster you will go straight to that experiential answer, because less and less are you valuing the thoughts and emotions. Not that they're wrong, it's just that you've experienced those again and again. All of our human existence up until this point has been really focused around the thought answers and the resulting emotions that come from them and an experience of being someone. So we're just looking for the experience of being nothing at all. And at first that will come and go. It will come in response to a question asked like this. And then it'll begin to present itself more and more often. And you might touch upon it in your meditation or in Satsang. And eventually that will become effortless, continuous, and just obviously how you are. The final realization of this will be that each question can become a lifetime of joyful study, and that no answer you receive is final. The joy of the manifest expression of you is that for each question you ask, you can experience an ever deepening answer that can never come to an end. You can choose to spend the rest of your life on an inner investigation as to what it is like to live as yourself. This becomes more and more delightful as you continue. Try it and see. So my life now is a constant, effortless, experiential answer to the question, what really am I? So there's a vast emptiness of being that's profoundly obvious as what is my most fundamental nature. And inside that vastness, all these shapes are appearing as me, and these shapes become ever more delightful, ever more wonderful, and have to agree with what is being felt inside. The experiential answer is always here, effortlessly, for anyone. It's just that we don't notice it, we don't value it enough, we don't put enough attention on it. Okay, so chapter 2 is confirmation of your formlessness. If you've already confirmed that you're formless through some inner revelation or self-inquiry, then this chapter can be lightly read and you may want to move on to the rest of the book. If, however, you still do not know this, or have a tendency still to think of yourself as a person or as someone, then this chapter needs to be fully read, digested, and assimilated before moving on. Each chapter builds upon this one, and this is the foundation. If you simply read this chapter and keep interested in seeing ever more about yourself, then you may not even feel a pull to read any further at all. In the final seeing, it will be revealed to you from inside. All the chapters are explaining the same thing and are coaxing you to become very curious about what you really are. As humans, we are curious by our very nature, but this curiosity can often be diverted by the mind at a time just before a real seeing is about to occur. Staying interested in this book, or finding a true teacher that has already realized this and can guide you, is vital at this point. Simply the wish to wake up fully will bring a teacher to you. Be sure that their words resonate in your heart as true. How to know that you are formless. When we look at ourselves and try to actually see what we are, we'll not find a person or a solid object. Of course, we find a body is present in our awareness. Thoughts may also be present, as well as emotions, other sensations in the body. There is a feeling of I that is aware of the body. There is a feeling of I that is aware of the body, thoughts, and sensations. But what is this I actually? All our lives we have been encouraged to believe that we are this mind and body, and this simply cannot be true because you are aware of them. Whatever you can perceive or observe, you cannot be it. Simply because you're looking at something means you're looking from somewhere else. It took me a while to really grasp inside my own being. But if I'm aware of my mind and body, then they cannot be fundamentally what I am. In fact, that I call them mine, my, rather than me, my body, my mind, my thoughts, my emotions, my experiences. None of these are fundamentally what I am. If we scan inside our being to find this I that is trying to wake up or is struggling with some emotional problem, we might be surprised. Scanning ourselves is not the same as thinking about ourselves. It's a direct looking to see, not thinking or analyzing what we are. Looking for this I does not involve thinking at all. So, where actually am I? What am I? If I don't count the things I can observe, my thoughts, my emotions, my body, there's this I that's left. What is it? Where is it? Is it what I thought it is? Not so much. Take a moment right now to see if you can actually find yourself, and you may be surprised to notice that you cannot actually find anything. Obviously, you are here because something is operating this body and is able to search for itself, but you are not what you might have thought yourself to be. As we continue to look again and again, we may come to realize that what I am is not an object. I is not a thing that we can find. In fact, we begin to see that what we are is no thing. We are the subjective watcher or witness. We are formless, and forms are appearing inside us. Fear response. It's quite common to feel fear at this revelation at first, but we should not let that halt our investigation into what we are. There might be fear, but this is simply because we're so used to thinking of ourselves and what we know. If we ask anybody what or who they are, then they will probably get some very strange, you'll probably get some very strange looks and answers, such as, I am me, obviously, or I am a human being. For the first time in our lives, we find ourselves unsure of what we are, and this can make us feel scared. If we allow this revelation to deepen, though, to come into the heart of our being, it can immediately begin to bring peace. For if we are formless, then we cannot suffer, age, or even die. It can be strange to see that our own self is already immortal and that our mind will try to reject this. You'd not be reading a book such as this if you were destined to let this fear response stop you. You must go all the way and come home completely. So once you have made this discovery that you're not a person, you can read on and begin to realize the sweet fruits of your inner looking. Remember, you are simply now realizing how you have always been, and nothing has actually changed. So I remember fear myself when I first began to recognize and shock, like I'm not actually a person. I'm not anything I can find myself. It's very, very different to what we're taught to think of ourselves as. Chapter 3, consciously be yourself. Everyone is already the pure awareness self of all that is. There never was any separation or merging with God. You have never been born or died in any lifetime. You have only had this one life, and that has been alwaysness, beyond time. All bodies come and go in you, noticed by you. Everything passes but you. All forms seem to appear, to change and disappear, from the most subtle energetic forms to thoughts, emotions, physical bodies, and inanimate objects. All this is you, and you are in all this. So why do most people spend their entire lives unaware of this and suffering? Because they don't know that they are living in illusion. They believe their minds and actually think that being a separate human being, traveling through time and space to the end of their lives and then dying, is the only option. You are finding out differently now, and you must make a choice to live in this new way. Even at this stage, many people have a glimpse of awakening or an experience of what it is like to live as yourself, yet few actually come to live consciously as the true self that we are. This true self is a stateless state of pure awareness, pure sentience before form, and is aware of the universe's coming and going. In this place, there is no idea of separation or unity, no duality, no time or space, no movement. There is no difference here. And there is nothing other than you. There is only you, and knowing this and living as this brings utter contentment and peace. During my own awakening, a great deal of time seemed to be wasted trying to find out what I had to do to wake up fully, so that the idea of falling asleep again could not even enter my consciousness. I wanted to know what the sages and avatars had done that I had not done as yet. What was the crucial difference that took one beyond the ideas of separation and coming home again permanently? What was it they must have undertaken in order to live in a place where none of this was ever true? I realized that the way to make the total and final crossover to the self, and only the self, was to consciously spend time as the self. So right now, you're already infinite, formless, immortal, ever present, not suffering, no desires, no wants or needs. But as human beings, we have not been conscious of that. We have been putting so much attention on our thoughts and we keep experiencing those thoughts as true. Because you're infinitely powerful already, any thought that you believe is going to show up as very real. And in what looks like other beings, other places, other things have to mirror that back to you to show you constantly what you think is true. So to consciously live as that which no concept is true for is going to begin to replace and wipe away all of this illusion, and to begin to quiet the mind naturally as a side effect, a byproduct of awakening. The abode of the sages. When we consistently spend time each day simply being the field of awareness, the power of that true place begins to erase all delusion from our consciousness, We can either spend the rest of our lives transcending a never-ending stream of problems that our mind presents to us, or we can allow the power of the true self to do it for us. It involves spending as much time as you can each day simply being aware of yourself consciously as being formless and timeless. So just putting attention on the fact that you can't, that aspect of you that you cannot find as a thing. You're here, you're present, and you're not definable really beyond that. You are not a particular thing. When we begin to, we spend all of our lives unconsciously being our true self. But when we are conscious of what is really here and put attention on it, then we begin to experience powerful change in the changeless that we are. So it's not real change. It's not that our world, our body, our mind is actually changing. It's just coming to reflect the emptiness, the formlessness that is real. If we think there's a world full of other beings and objects, then our mind and body will constantly be in a state of tension and a fear response to other things. When that idea begins to be dissolved, there's anything other than you, then your world begins to mirror back to you. Your body, how it feels, begins to mirror that back to you. Your mind begins to mirror that back to you. The sages realized that the only remedy for our illusion was to live in and as the true self, and to let this powerful love remove any traces of anything other than truth. To confirm that we are formless and not in fact separate from anything is merely the first step. And in fact, it means nothing if we're simply going to spend each day living from the mind and delusion. Even if we spend our lives praying and beseeching God to take away illusion, He cannot do it for us without our help. Our part is to be the truth consciously long enough, consistently, until nothing else remains. Until nothing else remains. Until nothing other than truth remains. There is nothing other than truth. To try to eradicate falsehood or illusion only perpetuates it. To try to become the self will only cause more illusion because you already are it. To have a deep desire to merge with God is necessary at first, but now it will only keep you seeming separate from it. The merging is simply living as if you were never separate at all. To plead with God, awakened beings or teachers to remove illusion from you is only to verify its reality even more. And I'm speaking from my own experience here. Desperately, there's nothing wrong with prayer at all. I have to point that out. I've done a lot of it, I still do. But not praying to some other being outside of you, because that is going to diminish your own power and cut yourself off from a whole host of help that's trying to help you in your own awakening. The thing about illusion is that it is not real. Anything you try to do to remove illusion only makes it appear more real, and what is real will appear further away. So if I have had a seeing that I'm formless and I'm not any particular thing, and then I'm trying to get rid of my old idea of myself, if I am in argument with my egoic sense of self, then I will be immediately and constantly not living from what I've seen to be true. So if there is only the formless self, and any time an appearance of my old self comes back, if I try to get rid of it, try to push it away, try to reject it, then I am dividing myself in my imagination again between what I've seen myself to be and what I thought I was. If I never was a separate being, then I never was a separate being. Hopefully that is becoming clearer as you can, as you're listening to this and sort of starting to understand that anything I do to try to get rid of illusion is going to make it seem more real, because I'm giving my powerful agreement as the self that there's something to get rid of. This may seem like a very simple thing, but to actually live it, when ego arises, seems to be there, some strong emotion, then there is going to be some urge to do something about it. And that urge, is that true for you as a formlessness? Your ego has seemingly existed for a long time. Has your formlessness ever been upset about it, ever? Okay. Only one decision remains then. Will you stay consciously as yourself long enough to be totally free? Will you stay as the field of infinite potential and treat every delusion that comes up and looked upon the same simple medicine of being yourself? Will you accept that you cannot fix the I that does not actually exist? Will you make the effort to stay this simple as much as is needed? This is what Christ did in the desert, and this is what Buddha did under the Bodhi tree. Every second you spend looking at what you really are and being it is undoing lifetimes of delusion effortlessly. Things will fall away from you without you even lifting a finger. Continue living your life and do what needs to be done, but inside you must stay as the awareness only. Be that nothingness. Choose to live as if you were already totally empty and see what happens. To aid this commitment and to support you in your endeavor, know that all kinds of help will come, and this book is one of them. The rest of this book will encourage you to consciously be yourself by showing the aspects of being formless and undivided that perhaps you've not yet fully allowed to pervade your consciousness. All the power of the universe is with you. So I'll read one more chapter, two more chapters perhaps, because they're fairly short, and then I see that Amy's got a question. I'll take a question after that. Okay. Chapter 4, You Are Effortlessly Here. Take a moment before you begin really reading to tune into your real self, dropping any thoughts, expectations, or illusions. Dropping any thoughts, expectations, history, problems, anticipations, and desires for a moment will allow you to see what you cannot drop. That is your real self, a simple, vast, and powerful space of awareness that is simply here. So just in this moment, dropping all expectations of getting anything out of this satsang, anything out of your awakening, of expectation of awakening itself, any wants and needs and desires, just for a moment will allow you to see that there's something here that doesn't need anything at all. If you look for your separate sense of self in this space, you'll not find it. Whenever you look for yourself, you'll only find this that is. This is your real self. It is invisible, intangible, and formless. Look and confirm for yourself again that this is you. So where am I? What am I? When I look, I can't find anything. I'm obviously here because I'm speaking through this body. And even after all this self-inquiry, all this teaching, all this meditation, I still cannot find myself. And that has become just such a wonderful thing. Cannot find myself as a thing, as an object. Notice that you are effortlessly here. You're simply here, and you're not exerting any effort to be here. Right now you exist. How much effort does it need for you to exist? You know, do you have to plug yourself in like you do your laptop to charge yourself back up? You have to sleep. Your body has to sleep to charge your body. But what about you? What does it mean to be effortless? Have you really considered that? It means that you are here without any other support. It means that you're not needing anything else to allow you to live. Being the effortless one means that you exist independently of everything. It means that if the whole manifest universe disappeared right now, you would still be here and unaffected. See, that's just absolutely mind-blowing, that you don't need the support of any form at all. You're using a body and you're using this body to understand yourself, communicating through separate bodies to understand yourself. But you don't need it, and you never did. Allow this to be digested and question these statements until what is said in these chapters is obviously true in your experience. How to do that, how to come to a knowing that this is just obviously, I alone exist unsupported by anything. Just to question again and again and again, what do I need to exist? What do I need to sustain my existence? If it's effortless for me to exist, can anything stop it? Can I run out of existence? Being the effortless one means you cannot run out of energy, that you have never been exhausted, and you can never get tired or sleepy. It also means that you'll never need anything at all to be here always. A car needs petrol eventually, or it stops. A human body needs food eventually, but you need absolutely nothing at all. Keep looking at what it means to be effortless here and confirm that whatever is making the effort is the mind and is not you. This silent space of awareness is simply here now and watching without any specific interest. Even when great effort is made by the body or mind, it is watched in this effortless place that you are. This means that you are safe. Nothing and nobody can cause you to stop existing if you don't need anything to help you exist. You cannot run out of battery or exhaust yourself if you are effortlessly already and always have been. This means your survival has never been in question and will always effortlessly continue. You are even beyond sustaining yourself as you are without beginning. Our mind cannot grasp at all what it's like to be here before the beginning of time and the eternal, immortal nature of the real self, but you can begin to want to know what that means inside. Once you examine the truth of these statements and come to live them experientially, then you will live in joy and clarity. Effortlessly you exist always, and once you become aware of that which needs no sustaining, you will be happy. Scientists have searched for years to find a clean, free, and sustainable source of energy, all the while not knowing that they are the source of all energy, and it is inexhaustible and unable to be used up, never ending and present in infinite supply. If you want to know just how much energy there is in you, look at what happens when they split an atom, how much energy is liberated from just one atom, and then imagine yourself to be more than that even. The source of all atoms is what you are. We can see evidence of this unlimited power when we manage to build an atomic bomb and set it off, or when we have managed to split an atom. This has always been here. Chapter 5, Embracing Your Formlessness. As we start this contemplation of ourselves, let us look again for what we are. Searching for what we actually are, or asking the question, what am I, should take us to an immediate noticing that we are not a thing. Not being a thing will allow us to release all fear once we have fully looked at it and digested this knowledge deep inside. Only things have beginnings and endings. Only forms have a birth and a death. We can immediately see that we find no entity when we look at ourselves. This is simply an invisible, intangible. There is simply an invisible, intangible, but very definitely present awareness that is what we are. Awareness has no form, although many forms appear in it. The more we look and confirm that we are formless in our essential nature, the clearer it will be that we are not subject to birth or death. In fact, we'll come to see that birth, life, and death are all happening to our body only, and that we are the immortal witness of this. This may seem very grandiose, but it will become obvious and simple the more you contemplate it. The body appeared from somewhere and is sustained by something other than it. Something must have been here before the body, and it is that same invisible and formless you that is making the lungs breathe and the heart beat. Realizing this will bring a profound change in your life, because you will no longer fear an end to you. Beginnings and endings happen inside you, but not to you. You did not start, and therefore you cannot end. Immortality is already your nature, and you have always been safe. Nothing can harm you or hurt you when you have no form. Continue in your investigation into what it really means to be formless, until you have fully realized that this is the key to freedom. Never assume that you have seen all there is to see. You can always have a deeper understanding about yourself. You are the source of all understanding. So even now, and for the rest of my bodily existence and any bodies that come after, there can never ever be the assumption now for me that I've seen it all. I would not want to hold any assumptions now, because I would have to experience them and get stuck. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know that even the idea that I've seen everything. So it may appear that I know a lot about awakening, but I don't know anything. And I'm constantly open to see more. And it's just the most beautiful place to live. You may find such questions as, how can I really know that I cannot die? Or how do I know I was not born helpful? Feel around inside yourself and find a question that really resonates with you. Questions can be extremely helpful to find areas where you doubt or your realization still could achieve greater clarity. It's totally okay to feel as though you can't yet totally confirm that you cannot die. It's simply a call to investigate further until you are convinced. You'll know when you are making progress, as there will be an absence of fear and an expanding sense of freedom and joy. Okay, so we will leave it there. There's a few questions waiting, so we'll read the rest of that in the Satsang next Monday. Okay, so I'll take these questions first, and if anybody else wants to ask, just click on participants at the bottom of your screen, and there's an option there to raise. There's a raise your hand thing, a little blue hand that you click on. Lovely. So Amy, we'll go to Amy first.
Thanks so much, Helen.
Hi.
Hi, that was amazing. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, a question came about prayer. Sorry, I've gone like
I understand, but I'm trying to read this book and it's like, yeah. I get it, don't worry.
Yeah, a question came when you mentioned prayer, because prayer's been quite a big thing here, and I just wanted to clarify, because we've talked about kind of asking or invoking beings for help, and at the same time I totally understand that when you said, it's asking ourselves and not having that separation. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, it comes up very often, who am I singing bhajans to? Who am I chanting about? And who am I praying to then if there's only me? And like everyone probably does, I went through a stage of, okay, I'm never praying again then, because I'm praying to myself. But really, it started to happen just as either the sense I don't know who I'm praying to, or I'm praying to myself as the immortal, formless, infinite being. And it just seemed that there was so many times, and still is, where just overwhelmed with joy and love and all kinds of wonderful things. The body just wanted to do something, if it was sing, or when I wrote the Gita book, and praying, and just something to seemingly give back all of that I've been given, some part of what I've been given. Even that, those words are in duality, but there's just a sense of so much has been revealed that sometimes we might find ourselves praying as a way to say thank you, or praying as a way to ask for help. And it's really, to me, in the end, there is no difference between praying and asking a question. You know, there is always, every awakened being, whether they still have a body or not, it is rooting for your own awakening constantly. But kind of each being, you know, none of us are really separate, but each wave on the ocean is given its own individual nature and allowed to come to full seeing in its own time. It's a free will universe. So sometimes if we ask for help like that, then all these great beings that are still here, very much here, but don't have a physical incarnation currently, or perhaps more true to say, they're living as all of these incarnations. Myself, I had a relationship with Christ. Relationship isn't the right word, but when I was really trying to transcend, to let go of some very stubborn ideas about myself, I just asked Christ for help. But there wasn't any sense that he was separate, you know, that it was just another way that I had appeared previously and was still here. And I had pictures of all of the awakened masters that I'd sort of revered in the past and still do. And you could say I was praying to them or asking them for help, but there was no feeling of separation in that. It's hard to put into words, but hopefully you get a sense of it.
Yeah. I'll listen back to this as well. There's lots clearing out while you're speaking.
Yeah, it's you know, we've never been even when I thought I was praying to some great being outside of me for help, I never actually was the realization. And prayer is just another way of being open to receive, you know, and perhaps it's only that our questions, our praying becomes more intelligent. Please help me see what I really am, rather than, you know, my initial praying was, please fix this problem for me, or else, you know, I don't know what to do. So our prayer can become you know, a lot of the great beings that have woken up have still continued to pray, to sing devotional songs, to write poetry. You look at Rumi's work, you know, it's very devotional. It doesn't have to be in separation. You know, devotion to the one great being can still express itself that way.
Yeah, and I suppose it's like interacting with others in life as well. It's that kind of, there's just wanting to express and be.
Yeah, every time you help someone, you're praying to the great being at you. There's no one that isn't Shiva. So every small interaction, it becomes a wonderful act of prayer and a giving thanks. And your whole life becomes transformed in that way of seeing that everything I do, no matter how seemingly mundane to the mind, is really helping and serving the self. Definitely.
I had just one thing that keeps coming to mind. There was Nisarga Datta. I remember reading years ago him with his teacher, because I can't remember if I got the story right, that he only saw his teacher once, or it was that and he said, I received this one piece of knowing, and I sat with it, that I'm ultimate consciousness or something, and then I just and that just kept sinking in, and I remember feeling like, oh, that's so far from here, you know, that kind of just devotion to sitting with that one, and then letting that all transform everything. And but, you know, I feel like that's happening with you, like that, just that pointing to what we are coming back to.
And don't forget, he, you know, the amount of devotion must have been increasing, and the desire must have been increasing for him to wake up, for him to encounter that being that said, you're already Parabrahman, you know, meditate on that and exclude everything else in your thoughts from that. We don't hear about how he led up to that. We only hear that he saw his guru a couple of times or something, and he'd just given a very simple instruction. So we all try to emulate this superhuman quality but we don't recognize that perhaps he built up to it like everyone else did, you know, before that. To even come across a true teacher, there's already an intense desire in place and the willingness to do whatever it takes. You know, it takes a little while then to assimilate what the teacher's saying and to overcome resistance, but that must have been in place beforehand, like it is with everyone. You know, it struck me that too. It's like, okay, if I'm already the infinite formless reality, every other thought I'm having is about myself as a someone somewhere, or becoming something, you know. And it just began to really hit me that nothing I think about myself in one location only is going to be true for my everywhereness. And it begins to just undermine all of the illusion, you know, quite quickly. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely. Vidya?
Namaste.
Hello.
Yeah, there was a real sense of something more concrete today. So thoughts were there, but they really didn't take much notice of them, so they did feel like, it was more concrete in things, that there was no interest. And I still can't plan much. And it felt like today that it was almost like the first day of school. I had no idea what it's going to be like. Like, I wouldn't say fear, but just a really not knowing what I'm doing, or there's a few things coming up that I just cannot think about how it's going to be. It's almost like more of a conviction that, not that I'm waiting for it to show up, but there is that sense of trust that it'll work itself out. It's just more of a conviction today in that scene.
Yeah, and it just becomes more and more solid, that conviction, and a realization, actually, I'd rather wait and see how the manifestation appears rather than to project about it, because I'll experience those projections rather than what would have shown up. And what would have shown up is always more wonderful than anything I can imagine or project. You know, but being the infinite self already, you're going to experience your projections about today, or you're going to experience today. You know, and that just becomes, actually, I don't want to know. It's like Christmas morning, you know, when you were 5 years old on Christmas morning, every day is a bit like that. And what's going to happen today? I mean, like today, there's obviously we had a plan for Satsang at this time. Later, I have to go get some food shopping. So there's a loose plan. There's a loose functionality of ego that can reappear when needed to. But it's not where you're living from. You as your default becomes that unknowingness, doesn't it? I just don't know, and I don't want to know, actually, and I'm just fine.
Yeah, so I guess what could be said is that there's more of an absence of thinking about it.
Yeah,
different to how it used to be.
Yeah, with that switchover of identity to I am that which is formless, you cannot think on purpose then.
Yeah.
You know, like if I said, do you want to go here today or there? Like as a person, you'd be, let me think it through. If we go here, we can do this, you know, and you're seemingly engaging thinkingness. So as that formlessness, you've never been thinking. Mind may spontaneously arise and say the thought, it's better if we go there first. And it might come out of your mouth, but that's very different to let me think it through, because then you're engaging the thought stream and it's going to proliferate and continue then if you think you're thinking. But if thoughts are just useful thoughts are just happening inside you, go this place first because there's less traffic or something, you know, those kind of thoughts will just appear by themselves.
So that's what it is. It's the identity is not there like it used to be.
Well, the identity has kind of switched, you could say, to being the knowingness. You know, to be the that which knows, but no particular thing is known. It's kind of the tenants moved out and the landlords moved back in, and you thought you were the tenant, and now you realise that I've always been a landlord. And it might be a little bit of a mess to clean up that the tenant left behind, but still the landlord is, that's what I am. I've always been the owner of this body and this, rather than anything in particular.
It is that knowing that it just sort itself out. I don't have to think too much about anything.
Yeah.
But there was one strange thing that happened. Is I was just doing something near this, the wood stove, and I had this scream like "ouch," and then instantly after that, I burnt myself. So it was like, how did that happen? It was just like, okay.
When there is no time, sometimes cause and effect get mixed up. It's you're outside of time, you're before time, and the body and mind are functioning in time. So sometimes there's a little weirdness sometimes, but it's fun, And sometimes you can, you'll hear the ouch, and then you'll have time to kind of go, oh right, let me not touch that then. Sometimes it still happens anyway, it still manifests, but you'll get a sense, don't go down this road today, and you've no idea why. You just trust it and you don't go down that road. You never find out why. It's just trusted completely. Wonderful.
Well, that's exciting. So there's just more and more to the less and less to. Yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Wonderful. Nikki.
Hi, Helen.
Hello, how are you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little broken, but it's okay.
Yeah, my reception seems really bad today, so if it goes off, that's the reason why. I just really wanted to say thank you so much. Just a genuine, heartfelt thank you. It's really, really hard to put into words, but
I get it. Believe me, I feel that way all the time. I'm just kind of, I understand.
I guess I was doing what I was trying too hard. And then something I got real release from yesterday, and this morning, and everything you've just read has been my experience since I got up this morning. So you've read that book, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is just exactly, genuinely what's happened to me this morning, and it's come from the questioning. But it feels really natural. It's not a trying. Even I went to meditate like I normally did, but it was just a natural thing. It wasn't right now I'm going to meditate. It was just a natural.
It just happened, didn't it?
It just, like,
yeah.
And it also came from the questioning. And I was asking myself the questioning, well, can I actually ever be hurt? Is the real me addicted? Because I've come from an addiction background. Is the real me, what is addiction? Just lots of, was hundreds of questions that I've asked today, but just this deep sense of knowing, because I guess one of the things that, I've answered all the questions that I was going to say, but I realise this is an experiential, because sometimes with the voices you think, is that me? Is that real me? Is that God? Is that, but you've helped me to see that actually those things come at the voice, the emotion. Actually, from what I've seen this morning, and I've had glimpses of this in my journey, but I really got a deep sense of it this morning.
Good.
Actually, there isn't really any dialogue in that place.
Nope. Yeah, it's a place where all dialogue emerges from, isn't it? But it itself is utterly quiet. It's before noise or silence even. It doesn't have that capability. It's good that you're seeing it so much clearer, and that's the aim of satsang, really, is to a great desire rose in me to want to live like this, not just to see it. I couldn't bear just seeing it. I wanted to be it completely. And that's starting to unfold now for you consciously, to live as it, which is wonderful. Fantastic. I'm not sure if we've lost you now, or are you still there? Okay, well, we'll leave it there for now with Nikki, and we'll go to Mike.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Oh.
I think she's still trying to share.
Okay. Sorry, Nikki, are you back? You want to carry on?
I'm so sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, can you hear me?
It's really breaking up quite badly.
I tell you what, I'll log out of here and I'll try it on my phone.
All right. Well, I'll take Mike's question and I'll come back to you afterwards, Nikki.
Great. Thank
Okay,
you
lovely.
so much. Sorry about this. See you soon.
No
Bye.
worries.
Bye.
Okay, Mike, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's not that much different than what other people were sharing. As you were reading the book, and even from the Satsang intensive yesterday, making a conscious decision to live as that, realizing that who I really am, I'm sort of understanding what you're saying. It's not really interested in thinking. Like, it's not really interested in trying to figure itself out, or like there's no, from that place, there's not a lot of desire here to think.
No.
And so, and having a hard time, even really wanting to think when I'm there in that spot, from that place. And what's also interesting though was I made a decision yesterday to just let the thoughts and the feelings be, and in realizing that really only thoughts are scared of other thoughts.
Yeah.
And in that, just saying to myself, if I have the thought that I could be totally affected and scared of feelings or other really turbulent thoughts, then just let them come and see if it destroys me. Let's let them come. And I do this thing a lot where I walk around listening to spiritual teachers on YouTube, like all over the house, and doing chores, because I'm honestly, to a certain degree, that part of me is scared of thinking. And now it's like, let's just see if what I was scared about was actually ever going to destroy me, and just try doing that. And, obviously nothing has happened. I'm still here, and realizing I can't be affected. But then what I just found interesting is what other people said, that the noumenon is just not really interested in thinking.
Yeah.
It's just hard to collapse around a thought.
I remember reading in the Ashtavakra Gita a line that says, nobody is lazier than the master. He cannot even be bothered to think. And I thought, gosh, that's just like what it really means to be effortless. Like, it's just too much effort for me to think now. Thoughts can happen inside me, but there's no ability to engage the mind on purpose, to as we were just saying, to really think on purpose. It's just an awful lot of hard work, and why would I want to do it anyway? There's nothing wrong with thinkingness. Thinking will happen when it needs to, but to be the thinker is like so exhausting. So it's just more and more effortless, isn't it, when it's just nothing to do with me.
Yeah, besides asking the contemplation questions, what is it like to live like this? Is it really true? But then taken from as the noumenon, the answer is like, I can't even quite make them out, because like it just doesn't want to think about it. Thought does. If I really went into ego and thought, it has a whole bunch to say. But then when I, plant my identity there, it's just not really, besides the questions, it doesn't really want to make too much sense out of the stuff. So
no,
that's all.
And increasingly there'll just be silence. Increasingly mind will either be talking or not, but you'll just be respecting your own silence inside. And you only really need to engage in contemplation or asking a question where you're still identifying with thoughts, where you're still picking them up. Then more and more you know, ego will panic going, I'm not doing any spiritual work. But really, it's just that more you're living as yourself. You know, it's just effortless to be the place before thoughts consciously. And then there's nothing you need to do about thought then. It's just happening or it's not, and it's not ever happening to you, and it never was. You know, is that clearer seeing?
Yeah, it's also clear that, you know, that this body has certain kinds of functioning about it, like attention and thought, and that's it. And that's all it is. It's not bad. It's just the functioning of this form that has that. Like, you know, finally realizing I'm the driver and this is the vehicle.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not necessarily the vehicle. So.
Yeah, and if the vehicle breaks, I'm still fine. I'll look after it, I'll maintain it, I'll service it and everything. But when it's gone, it's gone. It's fine.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Lovely. Nikki, I see you're back online. Do you want to have a go?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yep.
So, yeah,
Much better.
so, yeah, I think I'll do it on my phone from now on. Yeah, I guess I just really just wanted to say thank you. That's it, really.
It's great, and I'm really glad that you're joining us and that you're getting something out of it, you know, and just to the switch over you were saying before about trying so hard to just, okay, let me just live as this, that switch over when it starts to happen, you know, that there's just a letting go of kind of all trying to get to that self, you know, that begins to drop away, which I think is what you were explaining before. I couldn't quite catch all of it, but
Yeah, no, that was it. I think I'd come to a place where I was actually trying too hard, and it was just getting in my own way. It'd become quite intense. And so everything you were explaining yesterday was everything that I thought, this is exactly all that and listening to everyone else talk, I just thought this is everything that I've been doing. You know, so it and I have had glimpses of it, but this morning I know something has, like you say, a switch over. I mean, I was cooking, getting breakfast ready, and I was watching my own hand. I was watching my hand, you know, and it was like I wasn't the hand. I'm watching the hand.
So amazing, you know? Your body just goes about and does everything it needs to do without getting involved with it, and it's like, wow.
And the thoughts come in, but I can just see the thoughts passing. There's no person in that thought. There's nothing. That's just a thought going by. There's nothing there. It's got no substance. Well, it
there's nothing for it to stick to then, is there? It just passes through your awareness.
And I feel easy, just easy and light.
And it's kind of a smile that starts to happen inside. It starts as a small one at first, then just gets bigger and bigger.
A lightness and a joy that I've you know, yeah, I just feel extremely thankful. I really do. Thank you so much.
Oh, so good to hear. And keep on it. It'll just get better from now on for the rest of eternity. You know, if you can imagine that every day for me now is more joyful, more peaceful, more wonderful, more surprising and delightful. And every time I don't even bother thinking it anymore, because it's every time I used to think it can't get any better than this. It did. You know, and it's constantly upgrading itself, your experience, you know, in the manifestation, your mind and body. Against this constant background of none of this is really happening to me. I just am. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and that's it. That's what this morning I just, you know, I remember reading. I've read all these things, but I realised a lot of it was still conceptual knowledge. You know, but this morning I actually, the realisation of I just am. I just am, you know, with nothing else added to it. And it wasn't.
Nothing you can say about you, is there? Well, everything you could tell me would be about your mind or your body or your life.
Yeah. And like yesterday, obviously I said, I couldn't even really speak because I literally felt like I don't know anything. but I knew that was a good place to be, even though it's, you know.
If you ask mind, it's not a good place at all. But if you ask yourself, oh, this feels so wonderful.
And I could literally feel my mind. I don't know if anyone else has had this, but my mind was literally contracting and up. Like my mind, I could literally physically feel my mind not knowing what to do.
Yeah, it will flounder around a little bit because it's so used to being the decision maker. It thinks it has to do these things for you. But gradually that trust that we were speaking about, and the excitement to want to find out what reality is rather than finding out experiencing our assumptions about reality, that takes over. Even mind falls in love with how it feels to be, let's just find out, you know. It's like the difference between watching a trailer for the best movie ever and then actually watching it, you know, actually experiencing the best movie ever is never going to live up to the trailer, you know. So wonderful.
And I guess one of the things that I was wanting to ask you is, I mean, you've already sort of touched on it, but it's where, because I've been brought up in, you know, a religious of some sorts background. So this, when I first sort of started coming to terms with all this, it felt quite blasphemous.
It was the same for me.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, and listening to you, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I think you've lived my life. You know, but not that it's my life, but you know what I mean. So I guess that was always been a bit of a sticking point for me, is like, how much is the self, how much is God? Is it the same? Is it one? Am I God? Is God me? You know, those sorts of things.
Eventually we're all called to kind of at least admit within ourselves that those great beings, and even the great being that I have revered, you know, is me, is a appearance in me, and Krishna and Christ and Buddha and all of the awakened beings and all of the beings that aren't awake, you know, that are still sort of living as a separate being. They're all me, they're all the one. That has to kind of at least be admitted inside ourselves. You know, you don't need to tell anyone else, but there was a real unwillingness to admit that at first inside. You know, how can I possibly be those beings that I have revered for so long and wanted to be like? You know, to kind of like, oh, that's a bit, to actually admit it inside myself. But again, it's not true for the real self. It's not a problem for the real self, only for the mind.
Yeah, I get that. Thank
Wonderful.
you so much. Thank you so much.
I'm glad we got to talk clearly. That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Helen.
Wonderful. Last but not least, Maggie and Ian. Oh, one of the above.
Me. I just wanted to share really that you know, it's been very peaceful for quite a long, I'll say, time, but it's been very peaceful, and there's been lately, as I've mentioned a few times, there's been stuff that my attention's been drawn to, and in the intensive yesterday, one thing, I mean, I really got a lot out of it, but one thing that I've really been applying is when you said, if someone knocked on my door now, my attention would go to the knock on the door, and it hit me massively. It's I've been able to completely stop doing the shouldn'ting. There was a real sense of feeling exhausted last night, and before I would have, oh, you're not feeling exhausted, you shouldn't be attaching to how the body feels. And I just thought, you know, my daughter asked if I'd help with I would help with the tea, and I just thought, I can't, I feel really rough, so I volunteered somebody else. And I just completely let myself feel what I was feeling. Funnily enough, it just disappeared. And it's happened, I know it's less than 24 hours since we finished yesterday, but it's happened many, many times. Again this morning there was something that was felt, and there was a little moment of, oh, why are you doing that? And I thought, because my attention's on it. Completely let it go. And what you were saying about the ever deepening, in that this satsang, oh, gosh, I've had just such a massive opening. It was just beautiful. I was nearly crying with it. I just wanted to share it because I know how I've struggled or felt I've struggled over the years with everything, and just to everyone, and just keep going. It's just amazing. And thank you, Helen. Can't thank you enough. Oh.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. That's it's wonderful to hear. And you know, I think we need more evidence and beings waking up, actually doing it, actually breaking through, experiencing more peace, more love, more joy, and just letting go of that finish line that's imagined in the mind, right?
Yeah. I always acknowledge that there is going to be more, which helps. But just last week or so, there's been a feeling of really, you know, and it just disappeared. The whatever's appearing there is just an appearance that, oh right, that's there, and it's just, it was just not to encourage people in a patronizing way, but just to share and you know, you have these deep seeings, and then these things can come up and you think, well, why am I still doing that? Because you are.
Yeah, it just is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could give that answer to everyone in Satsang. Why is it just is? Why it's not all that helpful at first?
Yeah, it was really helpful yesterday and today as usual. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Okay. So, thank you. Namaste.